Hello, it's time for French Politics here on France 24. I'm Mark Perlman. On the menu this week, Parliament takes a first look at the much-taunted labor law reform promised by President Emmanuel Macron. One problem, however, could be that the minister in charge of this very reform finds herself under investigation for potential favoritism towards Emmanuel Macron before his election. And finally, the government unveils an ambitious environmental program. This is all coming up this week on the Political Brief. During his campaign, Emmanuel Macron pledged that his first priority would be to make France's labor laws more flexible, and that he would do this quickly using special powers, much to the chagrin of the opposition.
It's what French parliamentarians have been calling the mother of all battles, taking on the nation's entrenched labour code to free up the employment market.
Little by little, it has become less compatible with today's economy. It was conceived on a model for a lifetime spent working at a large industrial enterprise. It was aimed at that nature of work for decades. The labor code is sometimes also incompatible, not just with the business's expectations, but those of an employee as well.
It's not the first time a government has tackled the issue, aiming to bring down persistently high unemployment. Former President François Hollande's administration tried to push reforms through last year, only to water them down in the face of massive nationwide protest. This time, Hollande's successor Emmanuel Macron wants the means to undertake reform by decree, enabling him to make existing laws more flexible, not just in terms of streamlining hiring and firing, but in allowing firms to negotiate directly with employees rather than complying with sector-wide rules. Unions and politicians on the hard left, though, fear an assault on long-protected workers' rights, with far-left party Unveils France leading the charge.
You are asking us to give in on a major topic, our role as lawmakers, pure and simple. Well, for our part, we oppose you with a resounding no. You will not have a blank check to play God with the Labour Code.
The reforms themselves are set to be unveiled next month, though the opposition is already gearing up for a fight. Unbowed France leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon has called for protests on Wednesday, and unions are on board too, with their own demonstrations set for September.
So in addition to the opposition complaining about the use of this expedited voting process, the unions are also warning that the government could pay the price in the streets after the summer holidays.
In August, the government is going to produce 147 pages of executive decrees. Yet at this point in time, not one meeting has been scheduled with unions. They're going to force this text upon us, and we won't have our say on its contents. We unions, all the unions, are asking for a roundtable meeting by the end of August. For the moment, the government hasn't said yes. In other words, what they want to do is to show off their decrees and tell us, here, this is how it's going to happen. This is not what I call normal labor relations.
Well, the architect of this reform is the Labour Minister, Muriel Pénicaud. However, there is a problem. She is being investigated by magistrates over the way she helped organize an event in Las Vegas for the then Economy Minister, Emmanuel Macron.
Could Muriel Pénicaud be the fifth minister to quit France's government in less than a month? The newly appointed Labour minister is facing accusations of favouritism in the organisation of a 2016 technology event where Emmanuel Macron, then the economy minister, was the star speaker. Muriel Pénicaud was then head of Business France, a state body that promotes France's business interests abroad. The event took place on the 6th of January 2016. Emmanuel Macron travelled to Las Vegas to meet with heads of French startups and tech companies. Business France put PR giant Havas in charge of the organisation at a cost of nearly €400,000. Investigators, however, say there was no public tender, as required under French law for public contracts worth over €25,000. Muriel Pénicaud denies any wrongdoing.
I firmly maintain that I have done nothing wrong. I trust the justice system and I look forward to the conclusions that will be reached by the judges.
Police raided the offices of Havas as well as those of Business France late last month. Investigators found an email from Business France's Director of Communication in which she warned Binico of potential irregularities in the organisation of the event.
Muriel, briefed by us, has done nothing. Thus she will also deal with it when the state auditor holds Business France to account. It won't be for want of telling and telling her again.
The investigation comes as Emmanuel Macron has vowed to clean up politics. Muriel Pénicaud is now facing growing pressure to resign.
So the Labour Minister in trouble, but she has received the backing, for now, of the President Emmanuel Macron. Well, this week, in addition to the labour law reform, we've seen a kind of roller coaster if you're a French taxpayer. The government changed tack in just a few days over its policies. First of all, the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, suggested last week in his maiden speech before the National Assembly that cuts in the wealth and property taxes promised by Macron would be postponed. But after an uproar by business leaders and some MPs about the economic impact of delaying such costs, the president decided that actually the tax cuts would start as early as next year. This is how the economy minister Bruno Le Maire explained it.
I believe that we can reduce public spending very significantly in order to keep our European commitments and reduce spending in France. At the same time, we'll be able to cut taxes for French people and for French companies. I can fully understand the feeling of urgency from those people who voted for Emmanuel Macron, people who want to change things quickly and profoundly. But faced with this disappointment, I want to counter with enthusiasm, determination and strong will. We want to move fast, we want to go far, and we want to act with strength.
Well, of course, for the opposition Conservative Party, this back and forth shows that the government is simply improvising.
I heard what the President said in Versailles. I listened very carefully to the speech of general policy of last Tuesday in the Parliament. Not a century ago, it was 6 days ago. I read an interview with the Minister of Finance on Sunday morning. I read what people wrote on the social networks on Sunday night after the new arbitrations of the President. It's the permanent fiscal zigzag.
So tax cuts, yes, as early as next year, but there will also be a lowering of government spending by 4.5 billion, according to the budget minister. So in addition to those tax issues, Nicolas Hulot, the ecology minister, unveiled a raft of measures aimed at reducing car pollution and also at reducing the traditional French dependency on nuclear energy.
It's a matter of public health. That's how the French ecology minister Nicolas Hulot described a bold target which seeks to help France meet its Paris Climate Change Accord commitments.
We are announcing an end to the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2040.
The ecology minister admitted this would be tough to achieve, but he said he had faith that French car manufacturers could make the switch. Analysts, however, argue Hulot is being too optimistic. A glance at current sales suggests why. Less than 5% of cars sold in France in the first quarter of this year were electric or hybrid. Hulot's vision did get praise from environmental groups, but some, including Greenpeace, say there's a lack of detail. The goal to end the sale of gasoline and diesel vehicles by 2040 sends out a strong signal, Greenpeace said, but we would really like to know what are the first steps to achieve this and how to make this ambition something other than a disappointment. The ecology minister also said that France would reduce the proportion of power generated from coal from today's 5% to 0 by 2022, and nuclear power's share would be cut from today's 75% to 50% by 2025. And he said the combined effect of measures like these would help France to become carbon neutral by 2050.
Clearly, those proposals did not impress Benoît Hamon, the socialist presidential candidate. He claims this is too little, too slow.
What I regret is that there is no plan that sets an ambitious timetable for our industrial sector that would allow them to be at the forefront, as they would be more innovative and able to conquer new markets. What we have here today is a slow-moving scenario, whereas we could have chosen a quicker plan.
Well, just as he's preparing to welcome US President Donald Trump on Bastille Day here in Paris, the French president intends to put the climate envelope on the international stage. At the end of the G20 summit in Germany last week, he announced that he would host a climate summit in Paris at the end of the year, precisely on the day marking the second anniversary of the Paris Accord Donald Trump wants to do away with.
France will host a summit on the 2-year anniversary of the signing of the Paris Accord. The summit will focus primarily on mobilizing the private and public funding commitments made in the agreement.
Well, those international summits can sometimes feel stuffy. The French president took a short break from back-to-back meetings with his peers in Germany. Walking the streets of Hamburg, he said in this video filmed by his team, you can hear him mutter that it drives people crazy, quote-unquote, to see leaders locked up in their secured hotels and meeting rooms. Well, the French president is obviously on all fronts. This Tuesday, he traveled to Switzerland to promote the candidacy of Paris to host the 2024 Olympic Summer Games. The French capital is pitted against Los Angeles, and the final verdict will be delivered in September. Well, that's all we have time for. We'll now leave you with some images of the rehearsals of the Bastille Day military parade, which will be attended by the US president to mark the 100th anniversary of the US forces entering World War I against France and its allies.
The Debate, hosted by François Picard.
Live from Paris, a debate on the big story of the day with experts, newsmakers and observers. Continue the debate after the show is over by sharing your views on our forums.
The Debate on France 24 and France24.com.